Do you think we should not talk about the 7th of October?
I think that the 7th of October is being used as atrocity propaganda, and I think that you are personally responsible for spending 22 months propagating atrocity propaganda. You are justifying a genocide, and you will be remembered as such.
Welcome back, everyone. Talk TV, Peter Cardwell got his backside handed to him by Barrister Franck Magennis. The topic of discussion is Israel and Palestine. Frank has got some guts, and my respect levels for him have definitely jumped a few notches. He's taken criticism from his own peers, from his own profession, but that hasn't stopped him fighting for the Palestinian people. Let's take a look.
In regard to Hamas, you said that Palestinians were reasserting their authority on the 7th of October.
I'm not sure why you're mentioning Hamas. My speech didn't mention Hamas.
Well, you talked about Palestinians there reasserting their humanity on the 7th of October.
Oh, that's interesting. So you just conflated all Palestinians with Hamas?
No, I didn't do that. What I'm saying...
That's the logic of the genocide, isn't it?
Let's have a reasonable conversation, please. The fact is that you said the Palestinians on the 7th of October reasserted their humanity. How do you believe they did that?
It's obviously the case that the fascist apartheid state of Israel herded more than 2 million people into a concentration camp because it views them as a racial threat, and the reason it views them as a racial threat is because they're not Jewish. And so when people find themselves in that situation, it's obviously incompatible with their dignity. No one should be expected to live in those conditions. No one should be told that they're animals, and when you treat people like that, they will always find ways to reassert their humanity and their dignity.
So do you believe that reasserting their humanity was done by running a bulldozer through a fence, flying in on microlights, slaughtering, raping, torturing and kidnapping hundreds of people? Not just Israelis, of course, but Thai people, American people, Nepalese people, French people. You believe that's resistance rather than terrorism. Is that correct?
It seems to me that you've chosen to frame this interview in Zionist terms. Is that right?
What I've asked you a reasonable question, and I'm wondering whether you think that's resistance or whether you think that's terrorism or perhaps something else.
Do you think that what you're doing is atrocity propaganda?
I'm the interviewer. I'm asking you the question, and perhaps you would answer the question.
I'm here to suggest that your interview is premised upon extremely racist, anti-Palestinian bigotry, and that you're running cover.
Why do you think that? I mean, is it not the case? Do you believe that it is not the case that a bulldozer went through a fence, that people were raped, tortured and kidnapped of various nationalities, including Israeli people, but also Nepalese, American, French and others by Hamas?
The British government is participating in this genocide.
You haven't spoken about Hamas at all, Frank, and you've talked about the British and the Israelis. Why do you keep talking over me? Well, I'd love to, because you're not answering my questions.
I'm here to suggest that you are running atrocity propaganda for a genocide in which your own government is actively participating, and you're doing that because you've chosen to premise this interview on the most disturbing anti-Palestinian racism.
Why is it anti-Palestinian racism to talk about what the terrorist group Hamas did on the 7th of October? Why is that anti-Palestinian racism?
We're 22 months into a genocide that's being enacted by fascists, and you seem to have sided yourself with the fascists. Can you confirm for your viewers that you are in fact anti-fascist and that you oppose the fascists in the apartheid state of Israel as they are engaged in the mass murder of Palestinians as we speak? Can you confirm that?
Frank is the man. That's how you answer ridiculous and pathetic questions. Peter has proven once again what a rotten apple he is. Right off the bat, we know exactly what Peter's stance on his genocide is just by his opening statement calling all Palestinians Hamas. Credit to Frank answering Peter's questions head on, that Palestinians should be able and allowed to defend themselves with arms. Article 51 of the UN Charter states the use of force that is both necessary and proportionate to the attack to repel it. Unfortunately, Palestine doesn't have the firepower to deliver a proportionate response, but under international law, they have every right to defend themselves.
Well, I'm here to suggest that Palestinians have a right to use armed force to resist the apartheid state that is committing a genocide against them. That's clear as a matter of international law, but it's not just law. We have to think about how you actually stop a genocide. Think about the most, perhaps,
So are you then saying that what happened on the 7th of October is justified?
Well, you interrupted me again. What I was saying was that the way that you stop a genocide is with military force. And so I'm here to suggest that everyone should be loudly proclaiming their support for the Palestinian right to use armed force to attack the army that's committing a genocide against them. It's also the case that Palestinians should be supported whenever they choose to pursue whatever strategy they want to liberate themselves from the occupation.
I don't think you're answering my questions, Frank, and as a barrister you will know that in court you ask a witness a question and then they answer it. I just don't think you're answering them. Maybe I'll try another...
I'm not your witness.
I didn't say you were. I'm simply saying you'll be familiar with the concept of an interview. Usually I ask a question. Usually you will give me an answer. I think it's a reasonable... Sorry, go ahead.
Your questions are extremely racist against Palestinians.
How? You haven't told me how.
you're running cover for a genocide of Palestinians that's happening as you and I are speaking, and that specifically is targeting your colleagues in the journalism profession. Hundreds of your colleagues in Palestine are being murdered because they are. 237 journalists last time I counted. Your colleague Anas al-Sharif was murdered by the fascist apartheid state of Israel. You have nothing to say about it.
That is another matter. What I would, and I'm the one doing the interview. I'm the one doing the interview. I've broadcast about that previously, and my opinions on that are on the record. In regard to resistance versus terrorism, would you argue, or would you say that what happened with the jihadists on the 7/7 on the 2005 was resistance or terrorism?
The term terrorism may have some use as a matter of politics. As a matter of law, it should be abolished. The Terrorism Act 2000 is in a legitimacy crisis because it keeps being used by the administrators of the British Empire as they commit this genocide to try and attack and suppress speech that criticises them as they do that, right? Let's be clear that your government, the British government...
So I've given you the opportunity to say that the jihadists who committed 7/7 are terrorists. You've said that you've not taken that opportunity. Let me try another one. The Manchester bomber who murdered people, including children, would you call him a terrorist?
You're a disgrace to your profession and your...
Why? I'm asking perfectly reasonable questions which you haven't answered.
No, you're not. You're running atrocity propaganda 22 months into a genocide.
Well, why have you decided to do this interview then, Frank?
I was hoping that you might have some integrity and admit that you made a terrible mistake by embracing the fascist ideology of Zionism and agreeing to apologise to the people of Palestine for embracing...
So speaking of integrity, you're someone
You just don't let me finish. You call yourself a journalist, you don't let me talk. It's ridiculous.
You call yourself a barrister.
The ideology of Zionism is an inherently racist ideology, and it's a fascist one, and that the time has come for everyone to have the courage to do what Zara Sultana MP did and admit that anyone who embraced Zionism made a terrible mistake, that they were endorsing the logic of the mass murder of Palestinians because they're viewed as a racial threat to the demographic purity of Israel's apartheid state, and that we have to admit that the time has come for us to turn our back as the human family on that fascist ideology, to side unequivocally with the Palestinians as they liberate themselves from that apartheid state.
So you're okay.
270 journalists, over 170 UN aid workers have been killed, over 1,400 healthcare workers killed. According to UNICEF, over 50,000 children have been killed since October the 7th, and here we have yet another Israeli mouthpiece defending Israel's actions and genocide. As Frank said, Peter is an absolute disgrace, not only to his own profession, but also as a human being. There is absolutely zero empathy for this humongous loss of life, yet he expects everyone, when discussing Israel and Palestine, to condemn Hamas. When have we heard Peter, during this entire discussion, or any of his previous discussions, condemn the actions of Israel? Not once.
You're saying that we should side ourselves unequivocally with the Palestinians. Does that say that we should... does that mean, in your view, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Frank, but does that mean, in your view, that we should side ourselves unequivocally with Hamas?
There is a distinction in international law between what's called jus ad bellum and jus in bello, right? The reason for the war and the conduct of the war. I think that what's absolutely clear is that Palestinians have a right to engage in armed struggle against an apartheid state while it tries to destroy them. I'm obviously not here to start falling into the traps you're trying to set regarding the Terrorism Act 2000.
They're not traps, they're perfectly ordinary questions.
Yeah, it's just that one side of this debate has to be very careful about what it says because it might commit a criminal offence, while the other one gets to go on a platform and spout genocide, denial and atrocity propaganda for months and faces no consequences, right? That's the imbalance that the British state that's participating in this genocide has deliberately created. And I'm inviting you to have some courage to challenge the British state instead of engaging in this continued anti-Palestinian racism. It's a genocide, mate. Like, seriously, like, how have you allowed yourself to become so numb to that? Have you lost all humanity? Like, seriously?
I would argue, Frank, well, you're asking me a question, I want to put it back to you. I would argue that to be a humanitarian, what you would do right now is say that what Hamas did on the 7th of October was a lack of humanity, was a horrible, evil act that should not have happened. I would also challenge you to say that any anti-Semitism that happens in this country, including some that you have been accused of by others, should be completely condemned.
You want to be very careful. It's not been shown that I've done anything anti-Semitic.
I haven't said that either. I've said that you've been accused of it.
It's as I've said, you are currently choosing to side with the British government while it commits a genocide. I'm inviting you to do something far more courageous, to admit that you made a mistake by embracing the fascist ideology of Zionism, to apologise to the people of Palestine, and to come out like Zara Sultana did as an anti-Zionist. It's beyond urgent. It's 22 months into a genocide, and you're still talking about October when it started, October 2023.
Do you not think we should talk about it? Do you think we should not talk about the 7th of October?
I think that the 7th of October is being used as atrocity propaganda, and I think that you are personally responsible for spending 22 months propagating atrocity propaganda. You are justifying a genocide, and you will be remembered as such.
I think you'll be remembered too, Frank. I think you'll be remembered very, very clearly.
Frank is an absolute top bloke, and I quote him when he says, "It's a genocide, mate." Like, seriously, how have you allowed yourself to become so numb to that? Powerful words, and something that should resonate with all of us. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Support me by liking and subscribing, and I'll see you all on the next video. Peace out.